They said it would just be a quick weekend getaway. Pack light, drive fast, be back by Monday morning. Just another ordinary road trip to Oklahoma City. Nobody checked the weather forecast. Nobody thought to look at the sky. And by the time they realized what was coming, it was already too late. What happened next would turn a simple vacation into a fight for survival against one of nature's most violent forces, leaving behind a trail of destruction so complete that it would take decades to rebuild and a century to fully understand. May 3rd, 1999. Interstate 35 stretches south from Kansas into Oklahoma, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through an ocean of farmland and scattered towns. The Morrison family, David, Sarah, and their 2 kids, are somewhere near the Oklahoma border when Sarah notices something strange. The air feels heavy, thick with humidity that makes breathing difficult. The sky has taken on an odd greenish tint, the kind of color that doesn't belong in nature. David dismisses it. They're running late already, and Oklahoma City is still 2 hours away. The hotel reservation can't be changed. They push forward. What they don't know is that 200 miles to the west, something catastrophic is forming. Not a storm in the conventional sense, but a meteorological weapon. A supercell thunderstorm with rotation so intense that National Weather Service meteorologists will later describe it as one of the most powerful atmospheric events ever recorded in the United States. The Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, issues the first severe thunderstorm watch at 11 a.m. By 1 p.m., the watch is upgraded to a tornado watch covering central Oklahoma. The atmospheric conditions are textbook perfect for violent tornadoes. A powerful jet stream aloft, warm, moist air surging north from the Gulf of Mexico, a strong cold front pushing east from the Rockies, and wind shear, the change in wind speed and direction with height at levels rarely observed outside of supercell environments. Every variable is aligned. Every ingredient is present. What's about to happen has been building for days, encoded in atmospheric data that only a handful of meteorologists can fully interpret. The energy in the atmosphere is extraordinary. CAPE, Convective Available Potential Energy, measures atmospheric instability. Normal severe weather days might produce CAPE values of 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilogram. On May 3rd, 1999, CAPE values exceed 5,000 in some areas. This is fuel. This is the potential energy waiting to be released. And when it releases, it will do so with a violence that defies comprehension. At 4:47 p.m., the first tornado touches down near Chickasha, Oklahoma, about 40 miles southwest of Oklahoma City. It's immediately violent, F3 intensity, winds over 150 miles per hour. It carves through farmland, shredding barns and equipment, but the rural landscape limits casualties. The tornado is finding its strength, drawing energy from the unstable atmosphere, growing larger and more organized with each passing minute. Meteorologists at the National Weather Service office in Norman watch the radar with growing alarm. The Hook Echo, the signature radar return of a tornadic supercell, is massive and well-defined. Doppler radar shows rotation velocities exceeding 300 miles per hour within the mesocyclone, the rotating updraft of the supercell. These are numbers that shouldn't exist. These are winds that exceed the design limits of nearly every structure ever built. If you're enjoying this deep dive into one of the most devastating tornadoes in American history, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button right now. We put together these detailed documentaries every week, covering disasters, survival stories, and the science behind extreme weather. And if you're finding this valuable, smash that like button and share this with anyone who's fascinated by the raw power of nature. It helps us keep making content like this. Now, let's get back to May 3rd, 1999, because what happens next is going to be absolutely catastrophic. By 5 p.m., the tornado has intensified to F4 status. It's now a wedge tornado, wider than it is tall, a dark churning mass of debris and wind stretching across the landscape like a moving mountain. The tornado is heading directly toward Bridge Creek, a small town of about 350 people. There is no way to evacuate. There is no time. The tornado warning has been issued, but in 1999, warning systems are primitive compared to today. There are sirens, but they're often drowned out by wind and thunder. There is no smartphone push notification, no wireless emergency alert. Just sirens, local television, and word of mouth. Some people take shelter. Many don't. The concept of an F5 tornado, winds over 200 miles per hour, is abstract until you experience it. And then it's too late. At 5:18 p.m., the tornado destroys Bridge Creek. The town essentially ceases to exist in a span of 3 minutes. Homes built to standard residential codes, wood frame construction with brick veneer, are obliterated to their foundations. The tornado doesn't just damage these structures, it erases them. Debris is scattered for miles. Cars are lifted and thrown hundreds of feet. Trees are debarked and snapped at ground level. The few storm shelters and interior bathrooms save lives, but the randomness of survival is staggering. One house is wiped clean, nothing left but a concrete slab. The house next door stands partially intact, missing only its roof and exterior walls. There is no logic, only physics. The tornado continues northeast, strengthening as it approaches the Oklahoma City metropolitan area. The Morrison family is still on Interstate 35, now about 30 miles south of Oklahoma City, when David finally decides to check the radio. The emergency broadcast system is active. A male voice, calm but urgent, repeats the warning. Tornado warning in effect for Cleveland County, Canadian County, Oklahoma County. A large and extremely dangerous tornado is on the ground, moving northeast at 30 miles per hour. If you're in the path of this storm, take cover immediately. Seek shelter in a basement or interior room on the lowest floor of a sturdy building. This is a life-threatening situation. The radio crackles. David looks at Sarah. The kids in the back seat have gone quiet. Ahead, traffic is slowing. Brake lights multiply. The interstate, normally a clear shot north, is becoming a parking lot. People are pulling over, uncertain whether to continue or turn back. Some are abandoning their vehicles and running toward overpasses, a deadly mistake that will cost lives in the coming hours. Sarah turns and looks west. The horizon is black, not the darkness of night, but a churning, boiling darkness that seems to be consuming the sky itself. Lightning flashes within the storm core, illuminating massive columns of rain and hail. And then she sees it, a shape emerging from the storm base, a funnel descending from the clouds, impossibly wide, wrapped in debris. It's still miles away, but it's visible, and it's moving toward them. David makes a decision. He cuts across 2 lanes of traffic, exits the interstate, and heads east away from the tornado's projected path. The navigation system shows a small town called Moore directly ahead. They'll find shelter there. Wait out the storm. Be safe. What David doesn't know is that Moore, Oklahoma, is about to become ground zero for the most powerful tornado ever recorded. At 6:23 p.m., the tornado enters Moore. It has now been rated F5, the highest classification on the Fujita scale. Winds are estimated at 302 miles per hour, later confirmed by mobile Doppler radar operated by a research team from the University of Oklahoma. This is the first time in history that winds over 300 miles per hour have been directly measured in a tornado. The implications are staggering. At this velocity, wind doesn't just push, it disintegrates. The pressure differential between the interior of the tornado and the surrounding air creates a vacuum effect. Buildings don't collapse, they explode outward. Vehicles weighing thousands of pounds become airborne projectiles. The tornado is now 1.1 miles wide, a wall of wind and debris moving at 35 miles per hour through a populated suburban area. Moore in 1999 is a city of about 42,000 people, a suburb on the southern edge of Oklahoma City. The housing stock is typical of post-war American suburban development. Single-family homes on concrete slabs, minimal basements due to the high water table, and construction standards designed to withstand straight-line winds of 90 miles per hour. Nothing here is built for 300-mile-per-hour winds. The tornado enters Moore from the southwest, tracking along Southwestern Avenue, and then turning northeast along South Santa Fe Avenue. This trajectory takes it directly through the most densely populated residential areas. Neighborhoods with names like Eastlake Estates, Kelly Avenue, and Central Junior High. Within minutes, these names will be synonymous with total destruction. The Morrison family has made it to Moore, but finding shelter is proving impossible. Hotels are full, locked down, refusing to admit anyone. Gas stations are closed. The few public buildings they pass, a library, a community center, are either shuttered or overflowing with people who arrived earlier. David drives through residential streets, looking for any place to take cover. The sky is now dark green, the color of severe hail, and the wind is picking up, gusting hard enough to shake the car. Sarah is on her phone, trying to call family, but the cellular network is overloaded. Every call drops. Every text fails. They are alone, isolated in a city under siege, with minutes until the tornado arrives. Then David sees a church. Red brick, 2 stories, with a cross on the roof and a sign out front that reads, "All are welcome." He pulls into the parking lot and runs to the door. It's unlocked. Inside, there are already about 30 people, families huddled in the hallway, a pastor directing people toward the basement. The basement is small, low-ceilinged, accessed by a narrow staircase. David ushers his family down. The space is packed, standing room only, but they're inside. They're below ground. They're safe. At 6:29 p.m., the lights go out. Someone's phone flashlight illuminates the room, casting shadows that flicker across terrified faces. A child is crying. An elderly woman is praying. The sound begins. It's described universally by survivors as a freight train, but that comparison doesn't capture the sensory assault. It's a roar that vibrates through your chest, a bass frequency so low and powerful that it feels like the earth itself is screaming. The pressure drops. Ears pop. Breathing becomes difficult. And then the building starts to disintegrate. The church is well built by 1960 standards, solid brick walls, reinforced foundation, but it's not built for this. The tornado strikes the structure with 302-mile-per-hour winds. The roof is torn off in a single piece and hurled 200 feet to the northeast, where it disintegrates into shingles and timber. The brick walls shear away from the wooden interior frame. The second floor collapses into the first. The sanctuary, where stained glass windows once filtered colored light, becomes a debris field of splintered pews and crushed hymnals. In the basement, the ceiling cracks. Dust and plaster rain down. A support beam shifts, groaning under the weight of the collapsing structure above. People scream. They press against the walls, covering children with their bodies, bracing for the ceiling to cave in. The noise is unbearable, the roar of wind mixing with the cracking of timber, the smashing of glass, the metallic shriek of twisted steel. This lasts for 30 seconds. To those in the basement, it feels like hours. And then silence. The tornado has passed. The roar fades, replaced by the patter of rain and hail on exposed surfaces. Slowly, people begin to move, checking themselves and others for injuries. Remarkably, everyone in the basement is alive. Bruises, cuts from falling debris, a broken arm where someone was struck by a falling beam, but no fatalities. The pastor, a man in his 60s with a calm demeanor that seems impossible given the circumstances, begins organizing an exit. The staircase is blocked. The structure above has collapsed into the stairwell. They'll have to dig out. Volunteers, mostly men, start moving debris, pulling away chunks of drywall, splintered boards, sections of brick. It takes 20 minutes to create an opening large enough to crawl through. David goes first, emerging into a world that no longer makes sense. The church is gone. What remains is a pile of rubble, bricks scattered across the parking lot, the cross from the roof embedded in the ground 50 feet away. The Morrisons' car, parked at the edge of the lot, has been lifted, flipped, and dropped upside down onto the lawn across the street. The windows are shattered, the frame crushed. It's undrivable, a total loss. But they're alive. David helps Sarah and the kids out of the basement. They stand in the parking lot, rain soaking through their clothes, staring at the destruction. The neighborhood beyond the church is unrecognizable. Homes that stood minutes ago are now foundations, bare concrete slabs littered with debris. The only way to tell where houses once stood is by the driveways and mailboxes, small markers in an otherwise empty landscape. Trees are stripped of bark, standing like pale skeletons against the darkening sky. Power lines are down, tangled in wreckage, sparking intermittently. The scale of destruction is so complete that it's difficult to process. This isn't damage, this is annihilation. And this is just one neighborhood. The tornado has carved a path 38 miles long and over a mile wide through the Oklahoma City metro area. What the Morrisons are seeing is a fraction of the total devastation. Before we continue with the aftermath, if you haven't already, please hit that like button and share this video with anyone interested in extreme weather and survival stories. We're going deep into the recovery, the lives lost, and the lessons learned from one of the most violent tornadoes in recorded history. Your support keeps these documentaries coming. Now, let's talk about what happens when an entire city has to pick up the pieces. By 7 p.m., emergency services are overwhelmed. The Moore Fire Department, Police Department, and EMS units are stretched beyond capacity. The tornado has affected 8,000 homes, destroyed 2,500 completely, and damaged another 8,000 to varying degrees. The city's infrastructure is crippled. Power lines are down across the entire affected area. Gas mains are ruptured, leaking natural gas into the air. Water mains are broken, flooding streets. The hospital, Moore Medical Center, has sustained damage and is operating on emergency generators. Ambulances are arriving in a steady stream, delivering patients with traumatic injuries, crushed wounds, lacerations, broken bones, head trauma. The emergency room is full within an hour. Overflow patients are treated in hallways, in parking lots, wherever space can be found. The medical staff, many of whom have lost their own homes, work through the night. This is triage on a mass casualty scale, a scenario that few American cities are prepared to handle. The Oklahoma National Guard is mobilized by 9 p.m. Governor Frank Keating has declared a state of emergency, authorizing the deployment of 200 guardsmen initially, with more to follow. Their mission is threefold: search and rescue, security to prevent looting, and debris removal to clear roads for emergency vehicles. By midnight, the Guard has established a perimeter around the most heavily damaged areas. Checkpoints are set up at major intersections. Only residents with identification and emergency personnel are allowed through. The reasoning is practical. Disaster tourism and looters can overwhelm an already chaotic situation. The restriction is also frustrating for families trying to reach loved ones, but it's enforced strictly. The city is effectively locked down. The Morrison family spends the first night in a Red Cross shelter setup at a high school gymnasium east of Moore, outside the damage zone. The gym is packed, hundreds of people on cots, air mattresses, blankets spread on the floor. Volunteers distribute water, sandwiches, clothing donated from local churches. The atmosphere is subdued, a mix of shock and exhaustion. People sit quietly, staring at nothing, processing what they've been through. Children sleep fitfully, waking from nightmares. Parents comfort them, offering reassurances that everything will be okay, even though they're not sure it will be. David can't sleep. He lies on a cot, staring at the ceiling, replaying the sound of the tornado in his mind. The roar, the pressure, the feeling of helplessness as the church disintegrated above them. He's alive. His family is alive. But 36 other families are not so fortunate. The final death toll from a May 3rd, 1999 tornado outbreak is 36 and more, with an additional 8 deaths in surrounding communities, bringing the total to 44 across central Oklahoma. This makes it one of the deadliest tornado outbreaks in state history. The victims range in age from 3 months to 84 years. 4 of the dead are from a single family, trapped in their home when it collapsed. 2 are motorists who sought shelter under highway overpasses, a common but deadly misconception that overpasses provide protection. In reality, overpasses can create a wind tunnel effect, increasing wind speeds and turning the area into a debris trap. The myth of overpass safety will persist for years, despite efforts by meteorologists and emergency management officials to debunk it. Several victims are found in what used to be their bathrooms, interior rooms on the ground floor, the recommended shelter location for homes without basements. The violence of an F5 tornado renders even these precautions insufficient in some cases. The randomness is what haunts survivors. Why did one family die while their neighbors survived? Why did this house explode while the one next door lost only its roof? There are meteorological explanations, variations in wind speed within the tornado, slight differences in construction quality. But to those who lived through it, it feels arbitrary, a roll of the dice with death as the stakes. The search and rescue operations continue for 3 days. Teams of firefighters, police, and volunteers move through the debris field, calling out, listening for responses, marking searched areas with spray paint. The work is methodical and exhausting. Debris must be moved carefully to avoid causing secondary collapses that could injure trapped survivors or the rescuers themselves. Heavy equipment, bulldozers and backhoes are brought in to lift large structural elements, but much of the work is done by hand. Volunteers form human chains, passing debris from one person to the next, clearing paths through the wreckage. On the second day, a survivor is found, a woman in her 70s, trapped in the crawl space beneath her destroyed home. She's been without water for 36 hours, disoriented and dehydrated, but alive. Her rescue is captured by news cameras and becomes a symbol of hope amid the tragedy. But she is the last living person to be pulled from the rubble. By the fourth day, the operation shifts from rescue to recovery. The focus becomes retrieving the dead and beginning the long process of rebuilding. The economic impact of the May 3rd tornado is staggering. Initial damage estimates place the total cost at $1 billion in 1999, making it the first tornado in U.S. history to cause over $1 billion in damage. When adjusted for inflation and economic growth, the cost in 2025 dollars exceeds $2 billion. This figure includes direct property damage, destroyed homes, vehicles, businesses, as well as indirect costs such as lost productivity, emergency response expenses, and long-term economic disruption. Insurance companies are overwhelmed with claims. Some insurers, facing losses in the hundreds of millions, delay payments or dispute coverage, leading to lawsuits that drag on for years. Homeowners without adequate insurance or without insurance at all face financial ruin. A destroyed home represents not just a lost shelter, but a lost investment, often the largest financial asset a family owns. For many, rebuilding is impossible without assistance. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, deploys to more within 48 hours. Their mission is to coordinate federal disaster relief, provide temporary housing assistance, low-interest loans for rebuilding, and grants for those whose losses aren't covered by insurance. The process is bureaucratic and slow. Applicants must provide documentation, proof of ownership, insurance claim details, income verification. For families who have lost everything, including their documents, this is an additional burden. The frustration is palpable. Lines at FEMA Assistance Center stretch for hours. Tempers flare. People who have been patient and polite for days finally break down, overwhelmed by the complexity of recovering from disaster. FEMA representatives, many of whom are disaster veterans, do their best, but the system is not designed for speed. It's designed for accountability, to prevent fraud, to ensure that taxpayer dollars are spent appropriately. The tension between these goals, rapid assistance and fiscal responsibility, creates friction that never fully resolves. The rebuilding of more takes years. By the end of 1999, about 40% of destroyed homes have been rebuilt or are under construction. By 2001, that number rises to 70%. But some lots remain empty a decade later, overgrown with weeds, marked only by driveways leading to nowhere. These are the properties of families who couldn't afford to rebuild, who moved away, who decided that the risk of living in Tornado Alley was no longer acceptable. The city changes in subtle ways. New building codes are adopted, requiring storm shelters in new residential construction, stronger roof attachment methods, impact-resistant windows. These measures increase construction costs, but they also increase survivability. The codes are a direct response to the lessons of May 3rd, a recognition that standard residential construction is inadequate in the face of violent tornadoes. The codes are controversial among builders and developers who argue that the increased costs make housing less affordable, but they're supported by the city council and the public. Moore has seen what happens when homes are built to minimum standards. The city decides that minimum is no longer acceptable. The psychological impact of the tornado lingers for decades. Survivors report increased anxiety during storm season, flashbacks triggered by the sound of sirens or the sight of dark clouds, difficulty sleeping, and a pervasive sense of vulnerability. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is diagnosed in a significant percentage of survivors, particularly children who were in the direct path of the tornado. Schools and more implement trauma-informed counseling programs. Therapists specializing in disaster psychology work with families for months, sometimes years, helping them process their experiences. The work is slow and difficult. Trauma doesn't follow a linear path. It resurfaces at unexpected times, triggered by a sound, a smell, a news report about another tornado. For some, the trauma never fully resolves. They live with it, managing symptoms, finding ways to cope, but never forgetting the 30 seconds when their world came apart. The meteorological legacy of the May 3rd, 1999 tornado is profound. The event becomes a case study in severe weather research, analyzed in dozens of academic papers, used in training for meteorologists and emergency managers. The mobile Doppler radar data collected by the University of Oklahoma research team, which measured winds over 300 miles per hour, revolutionizes understanding of tornado dynamics. Prior to this, wind speeds in tornadoes were estimated based on damage surveys, an indirect and imprecise method. The May 3rd data provides the first direct measurements of F5 level winds, confirming theoretical models and validating the enhanced Fujita scale that will be adopted in 2007. The tornado also highlights the importance of lead time in warnings. The tornado warning for Moore was issued 40 minutes before the tornado struck, an exceptional lead time that allowed thousands of people to take shelter. This advance warning is credited with preventing hundreds of additional deaths. The success reinforces the value of investing in detection technology, Doppler radar, storm spotters, and dissemination systems. The May 3rd outbreak also accelerates the development of storm-based warnings, a system that issues warnings for specific storm cells rather than entire counties. This reduces false alarm rates and increases public confidence in warnings. In the years following 1999, the National Weather Service refines its warning criteria, using radar signatures and meteorological parameters to more accurately identify tornadic storms. The improvements are measurable. By 2010, average tornado warning lead time has increased to 14 minutes, up from 9 minutes in the 1990s. False alarm rates, while still high, have decreased from 75% to around 70%. These might seem like small gains, but in disaster management, minutes matter. A few extra minutes to take shelter can mean the difference between life and death. The legacy of Moore is embedded in every tornado warning issued today, a system refined through tragedy, built on the lessons of those who didn't survive and the resolve of those who did. The Morrison family returns to Texas 2 weeks after the tornado. Their trip to Oklahoma City, what was supposed to be a simple weekend getaway, has become a defining experience. David applies for reimbursement through his auto insurance for the destroyed vehicle. The claim is processed without issue. The car was clearly totaled, but the process takes months. They buy a used replacement, a minivan that's not as nice as what they lost, but it's functional. Sarah experiences nightmares for months. She wakes in the middle of the night, certain she hears the roar of the tornado, only to realize it's the sound of a passing truck or a distant thunderstorm. She starts checking weather forecasts obsessively, 3 times a day, tracking every low-pressure system, every severe thunderstorm watch. Her friends notice the change. They ask if she's okay. She says she is, but she's not. She's hyper-vigilant, constantly scanning for threats, unable to relax. It takes a year and a therapist specializing in trauma before she begins to feel normal again. Their kids, 8 and 10 years old at the time of the tornado, process the experience differently. The younger one, initially terrified, seems to move past it quickly, resuming normal childhood activities within weeks. The older one becomes fascinated with weather, reading books about tornadoes, watching storm-chasing documentaries, asking questions about atmospheric science. By high school, she's decided she wants to study meteorology. She enrolls at the University of Oklahoma, the same university whose researchers measured the 302-mile-per-hour winds on May 3rd. She graduates with a degree in meteorology and goes on to work for the National Weather Service. Her career is a direct result of the tornado, a transformation of trauma into purpose. This is not uncommon among survivors. Many find meaning in the aftermath, channeling their experiences into careers in emergency management, meteorology, disaster relief, or community resilience planning. The disaster doesn't define them, but it shapes them, influencing the trajectory of their lives in ways both subtle and profound. Oklahoma is struck by another violent tornado on May 20th, 2013. This tornado, an EF5 with winds up to 210 miles per hour, follows a path eerily similar to the 1999 event, crossing many of the same neighborhoods that were rebuilt after the first disaster. The 2013 tornado kills 24 people, including 7 children at Plaza Towers Elementary School, which did not have a storm shelter. The repetition is devastating, a nightmare replayed. For survivors of the 1999 tornado who are still living in Moore, the 2013 event is a second trauma layered on the first. Some leave after 2013, deciding that they cannot endure another cycle of destruction and rebuilding. Others stay, rebuilding again, but this time with fortified storm shelters, reinforced safe rooms, and a grim acceptance that living in Moore means accepting the risk of tornadoes. The double impact of 1999 and 2013 makes Moore a focal point for research into community resilience and disaster recovery. Studies examine why people choose to stay in high-risk areas, what factors influence rebuilding decisions, and how repeated disasters affect long-term mental health. The findings are complex. Some people stay because of economic constraints. They own property that has lost value. They can't afford to move. Others stay because of social ties, family, friends, community connections that outweigh the risk. Still others stay out of defiance, a refusal to be driven away by nature. The motivations are as varied as the people themselves, but they all share a common thread: resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. The technological advancements in tornado detection and warning have continued to evolve since 1999. Dual polarization radar, deployed nationwide by the National Weather Service in the 2010s, provides more detailed information about storm structure and debris. This allows meteorologists to confirm tornadoes are on the ground, even when visibility is poor. Wireless emergency alerts, launched in 2012, deliver tornado warnings directly to smartphones, bypassing the need for sirens or television broadcasts. These alerts are location-specific, sent only to devices within the warning area, reducing false alarm fatigue. Social media has also become a tool for disseminating warnings and coordinating response. During severe weather outbreaks, platforms like Twitter and Facebook are used by meteorologists, emergency managers, and storm spotters to share real-time information, correct misinformation, and provide updates. The ecosystem of warning dissemination is more robust now than it was in 1999, with multiple layers of redundancy ensuring that people receive information through multiple channels. But technology alone doesn't save lives. Behavior does. Studies consistently show that people are more likely to take shelter when they receive warnings from multiple sources, when a warning is specific and actionable, and when they have a predetermined plan. The challenge is overcoming complacency. In areas prone to frequent severe weather, false alarms can lead to warning fatigue, where people stop responding to alerts because they've heard them so many times without experiencing a tornado. This is a difficult problem to solve. Reducing false alarms improves public trust, but it also risks missing real threats. The balance between sensitivity and specificity is a constant tension in warning science. The May 3rd, 1999 tornado is often cited as a success story, a case where warnings were issued with sufficient lead time and lives were saved. But 36 people still died. The question that haunts meteorologists and emergency managers is, could we have done better? And the answer is yes, but it requires more than better technology. It requires a culture of preparedness, where people understand the threat, have access to safe shelter, and are willing to act on warnings. As we close out this story, I want to ask you one more time to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We cover disasters, survival stories, and the science that explains why these events happen. Hit that like button, share this video, and drop a comment below if you or someone you know has been through a tornado. Your engagement keeps this content coming. Thank you for watching. The Morrison family story is not unique. Thousands of families experienced similar trauma on May 3rd, 1999, and in the countless tornadoes that have struck before and since. What makes their story worth telling is not its uniqueness, but its universality. The decision to keep driving despite the warning signs. The frantic search for shelter. The terror of the storm. The relief of survival. The long, difficult process of recovery. These are experiences shared by survivors of every major tornado in American history, from the Tri-State tornado of 1925 to the Joplin tornado of 2011 to the countless smaller events that don't make national news but devastate communities nonetheless. Each disaster is a reminder that nature remains indifferent to human life, that the atmosphere operates according to physical laws that don't accommodate our desire for safety and stability. The 1999 Oklahoma City tornado outbreak was the costliest tornado event in U.S. history at the time, a record that has since been broken but stands as a benchmark in tornado history. It demonstrated the destructive potential of violent tornadoes in urban and suburban areas, the limitations of existing warning systems, and the resilience of communities in the aftermath of catastrophic loss. Oklahoma has become synonymous with tornado survival and recovery, a city that has been destroyed twice and rebuilt twice, a testament to human determination in the face of nature's most violent storms. The lessons learned from May 3rd, 1999 continue to influence policy, building codes, warning systems, and public education. Every improvement in tornado safety, every life saved by a storm shelter, every person who takes shelter because of a warning is part of the legacy of that day. For David and Sarah Morrison, the tornado remains a dividing line in their lives. There's before the tornado, when storms were just weather, and after the tornado, when every dark cloud carries the memory of 30 seconds of terror. They still talk about it. Not often, but when they do, it's with a clarity that surprises them. The details haven't faded. The sound, the smell of dust and rain, the feeling of the walls shaking, the silence that followed. They remember the people in the church basement, strangers whose names they never learned, but whose faces they'll never forget. They remember the pastor who stayed calm, who led them to safety, who probably saved their lives. They wonder sometimes what happened to those people. Did they rebuild? Did they stay in more? Are they okay? The answers don't matter as much as the questions. The act of remembering, of bearing witness, is itself a form of survival. The May 3rd, 1999 tornado was a natural disaster of extraordinary magnitude, but it was also a human story of fear, loss, and resilience. It was a reminder that preparedness matters, that warnings save lives, that community support is essential in recovery, and that the trauma of disaster can linger long after the debris is cleared and the homes are rebuilt. It was a story that began with a simple decision to take a trip to Oklahoma City and ended with a city in ruins and a family forever changed. This is the reality of living in Tornado Alley, where the question is not if another violent tornado will strike, but when and whether we will be ready when it does. The sky can turn green without warning. The roar can come out of nowhere. And in those moments, the only things that matter are shelter, preparation, and the will to survive. Moore learned this lesson at the cost of 36 lives. The rest of us have the opportunity to learn it without paying that price. The question is whether we will. Thank you for watching. Stay safe.